Okay, starting the work week on the Miami Dolphins, good football team, 6-3, have won their last three. They're operating at a high level on all three sides of the ball. They're well coached. I know a bunch of their coaches. They do a great job. And then I think they're doing a nice job. Obviously, offensively, quarterback's playing at a very high level. They're dangerous on the perimeter. They're doing a nice job scoring a bunch of points. Defensively, really impressed with their defense in total. The front is big and stout and long. They can rush the passer. They can stop the run. In the back end, they have playmakers, with Howard being as good as it gets in the NFL. Really, really good player. So, and then special teams, really well coached. Coach Crossman coaching the teams does a nice job. So quite the challenge going on the road, playing a good football team. So we got to have a really good work week, and that starts really today. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Is Denzel fully cleared?
I don't know that he's fully cleared yet, but again, he's hitting all the benchmarks right now.
Monday okay?
Yes.
He's not practicing today,
Great.
we're told. What is his situation?
Rehabbing, working through the injury.
Tyreek Hill is one of those faster than fast guys. What kind of problems does he create, obviously, throughout your defense?
Yeah, I think they're doing a nice job utilizing his speed. He's got world-class speed, can make plays down the field, tracking the football, can get the ball in his hands early and let him go. We've played him a couple times in Kansas City, so that speed, it's real. And then just the way they use him with motion, it's almost like Canadian football where he's got a full running start at the snap. So he gets into your defensive secondary very quickly. Quarterback does a nice job of getting him the ball in areas that he can catch and pluck and go.
How do you try to combat that?
Well, I mean, every team goes into it trying to slow him down. It's difficult. There's not one thing that you can do to say, hey, we're going to stop him by doing this. It's just he's good, and they got other players that can hurt you. So you try to give them a couple different looks. It might be one plan on this play and one plan on another play, and try and just be sound in what you're doing. But he's a good player. You're just trying to limit the big explosives.
How much harder is it when you have a guy like Waddle on the other side so you can't put all your attention on him?
Yeah, I think that's really that's a big part of that. Waddle's a really, really good young player in his own right, different, but fast and dynamic with the ball in his hands. So they complement each other in that way, and again, it's a challenge for our defense.
Seem to like to attack the middle of the field, the middle of the defense. Just what type of pressure is that put on that side of the ball for you?
Yeah, I think that they do a really nice job. Quarterback works the middle of the field. Their route concepts are around that middle of the field, and when you do that, you're not going to run out of grass. You're going to not use the sideline, sometimes to your advantage as a defense. Well, when you work the middle of the field, you work in between the numbers. You can catch and turn and get yak. So they can do it from a shorter pass attack. They can do it from an intermediate and deep pass attack, but so much of it comes back to defensively being true to your rules, being true in your zones, in your mans, and then ultimately when in position to make a play, you got to make a play.
You said they do a great job on the perimeter. Is that how they set it up?
I guess when I say perimeter, I'm saying they're receivers, but their receivers can make plays all over the field, to Darryl's point. I mean, they can throw just go routes and that type of thing. They can also, off of some of their RPOs, get the ball in their receivers' hands, really using all 53 in the third of the field.
Is of an immediate impact is Bradley Chubb made on their defense?
Really good player. Joe Woods knows him well, so speaks very highly of him. We obviously did a lot of study on him back to his Denver time, just one game to watch there in Miami, but very, very strong at the point of attack, sets the edge well, very good motor. Only one game look at how they may use him from last week, so they may move him around. We're not exactly sure. They have multiple edge rushers, but adding him to the mix, he's a really good football player.
When you're talking to Jacoby, he mentioned that the players kind of realize the magnitude of that Bengals game, which is why everybody played so well. How difficult is it to keep that urgency up now for these next 9 games?
Yeah, I think for us, Jeff, it really does go back to a one-game season, one game. This one's important. the next one's going to be important, and so on. But for us, we totally understand where we are, but we got to focus on going 1-0 down against a very, very good football team on the road.
Take these things 1 week at a time, but the reality is over the last 9 games, you're going to play 6 of these on the road in hostile environments. So I guess my question is, how do you prepare for that and maybe try and turn that into somewhat of an advantage for your team?
Yeah, I think, the NFL game, you got to go on the road and win, and in some tough environments where it's loud, and that has an effect on the offense, particularly on third down. So you got to be great in your operation. But we got one more road game than home game this year. You can't control how the schedule shakes out, those type of things, and you really do have to have the mentality that you'll play anybody, anywhere, wherever it shakes out.
I know the linebacker room has obviously had so many injuries this year. I guess how important has Sione Takitaki been in putting up some of the best numbers of his career and flying around the field the way he has?
Yeah, he's played really well, and I think you've seen an increased number of snaps, and I think what he's done with those has been impressive. Sometimes when you're that base linebacker that comes off in nickel, you just don't get the opportunity, you don't get the exposure. And I think with added exposure, he's done a nice job. Plays very physical, good tackler, smart, in the right place. So excited for him to have a continued role in what we're doing moving forward.
Opportunity just the biggest change, you think, from
I
season
do.
to season?
Yeah, I think it's simply that, just opportunity. Yes, Cam.
Sorry. Sorry, Ashley. Jacoby also mentioned playing complementary football, and your message to them was this is what it could look like if we continue this. How important is it for you guys to keep that communication, not just with each other on all sides of the ball, but offense with the defense with special teams and all of that together going into this week?
I think it's vitally important. I think it's the greatest team game there is, and you need all 3 sides of the ball to play these team games, to get a team win. You really have to play together. You go back to that last game, our defense played really well early and kept the team in it, and I think that's really important. And then you're going to make a play on special teams, which is going to flip the field, and that's that winning the field position battle. So it all plays into it, and I think our team has been in situations where we know if we've fallen short, we just needed one more play from this side or one more play from this player or whatever it is. So we know the margins are so small in this game. And that's why it is so important to play that complementary football and understand it's going to take all 3 sides of the ball.
Who still seems like he really wants to try to play in this game. Are you optimistic that he will?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll see. He's rehabbing very, very hard. He's trying like crazy. I can't peg it right now on a Wednesday, but I wouldn't rule him out.
2-0 after buys and 2 previous seasons. You think you got this figured out? Late over those last 3, 5?
No, I mean, coming off the bye is a time to get healthy. It's important for some guys that are battling. Mary Kay mentioned David. There's guys that are battling to get back. I think that's where the bye helps you. I think it helps you, like we've talked about, self-scout, to really understand yourself and then to dive into your opponent ahead of time. So I don't know what everyone's record is coming off the bye, but you would think that'd be an advantage to most teams.
500 overall.
Yeah, or better.
Obviously, Mike McDaniel spent a lot of time in the Shanahan system. Are there significant differences, though, with what he's running down there versus the Shanahan scheme?
I think everybody kind of shares a little bit of DNA, and there's a thread woven throughout them, these offenses in similar ways. And then what's so interesting to me is how different they can seem as well. So some teams like ourselves, we may feature different run types more so than others. What they're doing in Miami with a lot of the pre-snap motion is unique, and the way they're throwing the ball and the actions off of which they're throwing the ball is unique to them. So I think I do think there's similarities, but then the differences are pretty stark when you watch the tape.
The trade deadline's passed, so who you have is what you're going to go with down the stretch. And my question is leaning more towards Kareem's particular situation. His future for the rest of the year now is no longer in flux. Does that change anything for you when it comes to using him or incorporating him or anything like that? Now you have that 1-2 combination the rest.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Daryl, but it really doesn't affect me or us in any way. Kareem's a big part of what we do. He always has been, always will be. Plays hard. There's going to be opportunities for him. So, but in relation to the trade deadline, anything like that, doesn't really affect me.
Silly question, but what do you think about left-handed quarterbacks? Do they affect your game plan? Is it something that you would use in your system? Is it?
Yeah, you don't discriminate. So, yeah, I mean, lefty, righty doesn't really matter. I think there's a little bit of the element of the receivers getting used to catching that ball, but that comes pretty quickly once you get used to that, because obviously it's spinning differently. You can, at times, you run certain plays for righties that, you know, a lot of quarterbacks are more comfortable rolling to the right when you're a righty, so some things may be mirrored when you have a lefty. But Tua in particular, there's no limitations to what he can do. He's playing at a very high level. He's making throws to every area of the field, operating their system, showing accuracy, making good decisions with the ball. So he's doing a nice job.
When you compare him to Tua, is he one of those guys similar to the Lamars where you want to keep him pinned in the pocket?
You know, he's athletic. He can make plays with his feet, but I think he's a very good thrower of the football. I mean, he the ball comes out of his hand quickly, so in terms of keeping him in the pocket, yeah, they will have design movements and those type of things, but he does a nice job of processing quickly and getting the ball out quickly, which we would expect to continue. Doesn't make it any easier because he's still playing at a high level.
Are you guys keeping an eye on the weather, and are you worried at all about travel plans or anything going on for the weekend?
No, I think travel plans, we should be okay. It's going to be warm. You know, it'll be 82, sounds like, on Sunday. It'll be warmer in the sun on our sideline, so we'll have plans for that. But I always tell the guys, you know, we don't control the weather. We deal with it. So whatever it is, it is. But I do want them to know ahead of time just to have the hydration and do the things that can help them leading into Sunday.
Kevin, I know we've talked about Nick Chubb's consistency and work ethic and all the great things about him ad nauseum, but what does it mean overall to have, for a franchise, to have that kind of a player that you can point to for all your young players to follow, all the things that he brings?
Yeah, I think, you know, Nick's a great example, Tom, of you don't have to be loud. You don't have to be vocal. You don't have to be boisterous. Don't have to be giving pregame speeches in order to lead. He's a great leader by example. He will speak up when necessary, and he has done that. But I think it's always good when there's an example of how to do it the right way. And that's helpful in the running back room. I think it's helpful to the offense, helpful to the team. I think when you have a guy that's a pro's pro that does his job, I think everybody sees that. The fact that he doesn't say much, you know, doesn't change his standing to me, to his teammates or whatever. I just think they see a guy that knows when it's time to get to work.
When he speaks up like that, does that kind of give it a little extra punch because he's not the type to normally speak up?
It's always, yeah. I mean, with Nick, anytime he speaks, it's you know it's coming from somewhere that's important to him. You know, he's part of our leadership group, so he shares his opinions to the group. So he's earned that role on our football team.
Going back to that question about the Shanahan offenses and how everybody kind of does it different, as you're going through a week like this or some other team, are there times when you see something and like put a pin in it and say, hey, you know, I can use that, or things you've never thought of?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you get into the season and you're game planning, you're watching a lot of tape, and you're always looking for inspiration. So sometimes you put on. I have coaches that grab tape of certain teams that I always want to see the stuff that they're doing week in and week out, so you can steal it. And that's just. And sometimes you steal it exactly as it is. Sometimes you grab it and say, okay, they did it this way. It probably fits us to do it that way. So there are teams that we share similarities with that we watch every single week to help us with ideas.
Somebody runs something against you and you're like, hey, wait, that's mine.
Yeah, it happens. And listen, I don't know if there's any original ideas anymore. I mean, we're all stealing from each other, and I'm not afraid to admit it either.
You mentioned the Miami sideline thing, and that's kind of like a really niche, like, have you ever experienced anything like that at opposing stadiums where maybe they have an advantage that you wouldn't even think about? Or
I remember when we played the Seahawks in the playoffs when it was -6 degrees when I was with the Vikings, and we were at the Vikings. We were purposefully put the sideline where we did. It was on the other side of the Gophers, so we were actually on the visitors' side than the Gophers, but knew that in cold weather that would be the shade. So it was -6 in the sun. I don't even know what it was. It was colder in the shade that day. Now, the Seahawks played great, but that's one example of where you can do some things home field advantage when it comes to weather.